My name is Ken. I'm just an ordinary employee. 15 years ago, I lost my wife, Emily, in an accident. While the grief has gradually faded, there isn't a day that goes by without me thinking of Emily. I loved her so much that when I heard she had died in an accident, it was incredibly hard for me. The thought of Emily, who was always there for me, never appearing before my eyes again, made me feel like my heart was being crushed, and I spent many nights crying. I was definitely at the lowest point in my life at that time. Now, somehow or other, I'm already 45 years old. Friends and family have suggested I remarry, but I'm not keen on the idea and have continued to decline. Deep down, I still believe Emily is the only one for me. I'm sure I'll remain single for life. That's what I thought, but a turning point suddenly arrived. It happened when I went to a client for contract negotiations. On that day, I was nervous for the first time in a while. The reason was that this time, my counterpart was the major corporation, Smith Group. Smith Group is a commercial company built from scratch by its president, Jack Smith. Its annual sales are incomparably higher than ours. Given that such a company might sign a contract with us, my boss, Will, handed this negotiation over to me, even though I was busy with other work. The responsibility is heavy, I muttered to myself, feeling the pressure. However, I've been in this career for over 20 years now. I've experienced quite a few situations. After my wife's death, I threw myself into my work to the extent that some of my colleagues started calling me the ace. Honestly, it's a bit embarrassing to be called that, but wanting to live up to expectations, I put my all into the negotiation. Then, as per your request, the person in charge smiled at me. It was the moment the deal was sealed. "Thank you very much," I said, greeting them, then let out a sigh of relief. There are some details to work out, so I'll be visiting Smith Group for the next 2 to 3 weeks to explain. After setting the date and time, I left their office. When I called to report the successful negotiation, Will was ecstatic and said over the phone, "We're going out to drink tonight. For now." He asked me to return to the office at my leisure to discuss the details, so I boarded the bus. Maybe I should grab something to eat at a shop on the way. That's what I thought as I gazed at the shopping street outside the bus window. But when I saw a utility pole on a road slightly away from the shopping street, my heart skipped a beat. That place is still a painful spot for me. It's where Emily, my wife, died in an accident 15 years ago. She was trapped between a car and a wall near that pole. Just imagining your loved one in such a state is unbearably painful. I took a deep breath to calm myself. That's when it happened. Suddenly, a woman in front of me started gasping for air and crouched down in distress. I instinctively asked, "Are you okay?" She looked to be in her early 20s. She seemed about to collapse, so I wanted to support her, but not wanting to touch a young person without permission, I awkwardly moved my hands in the air. The woman said, "I'm okay," and forced a smile at me, but her face was turning increasingly pale. I couldn't just leave her like that, so even though it wasn't my intended stop, I suggested we get off the bus together. Then, I helped her to a bench at the bus stop and made her sit down. "Sorry for bothering you during your busy time. It's okay. I have some time as I'm just returning from a meeting." I responded with a smile to the woman, who looked apologetic with furrowed brows, reassuring her. She seemed to calm down a bit and started speaking again. "Thank you for helping me. It's strange. I thought I was okay lately." The woman weakly smiled. "Do you have any chronic illness? You've been holding your heart since a while back." When I asked her, she replied with a bitter smile, "Actually, my heart is fine. It's just that, due to a car accident in the past, I sometimes have these attacks." Just now on the bus, as she recalled the incident, tears began to stream down her face. I was surprised but quickly reassured her that she didn't need to explain if it was difficult. Actually, I lost my wife in a traffic accident too. There was a time when I was scared just to see a car, so I understand how you feel." Hearing my words, the woman's eyes widened and she murmured softly, "Is that so?" It seemed she might have symptoms similar to depression. I didn't want her to talk about the accident because I didn't want her to relive the trauma. "Here, take this." I handed her a bottle of water I had bought from a vending machine near the bus stop. She took the water from me with an apologetic look on her face, yet gratefully said, "Thank you." I stayed with her until she calmed down, and after a while, she called a taxi and left in the opposite direction. It seemed resolved. But then, I noticed a shiny keychain on the ground. She must have dropped it before getting into the taxi. It was a basketball keychain with the names of an elementary school and a club team engraved on it. It could be a keepsake. I regretted not asking for her contact details, just in case. The next day, as I returned to Smith Group for a meeting, I suddenly heard a female voice exclaim, "Ah!" When I turned around, I saw the woman from the bus the day before. "You're from yesterday. Why are you here at our company?" "Ah, I'm here for a business meeting." After explaining the situation, she was surprised and said, "What a coincidence. Are you an employee here?" I asked. "Yes, I work here at the reception." "Oh, my name is Maria Smith." "Oh, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Ken." "You said Smith." Hearing the familiar surname, I looked up. Maria then said, "Yes, I'm the daughter of the president, Jack Smith." She said it with a shy smile. "I'm surprised. I had no idea you were the president's daughter." Amazed, I remembered the keychain I found and handed it to Maria. "Oh, I've been looking for this. Did you pick this up?" She seemed very surprised. "I was planning to take the bus frequently for meetings with Smith Group, so I kept it with me, hoping to return it to you. If not, I plan to hand it over to the police. I'm glad I found you so soon." Relieved that I could return it, a smile spread across my face. Then, I noticed Maria's face turning red. "Ken, you're such a kind person. I've never met a man as kind as you." She looked at me with a dreamy expression, then suddenly with a determined gaze. "You're coming here tomorrow too, right?" Yes." Her intense gaze made my heart skip a beat. Unexpectedly, I found myself receiving proactive advances from the president's daughter. "Hey Ken, let's go out together sometime." Every time Maria saw me, she would come closer, inviting me on a date. A date? But I'm a 45-year-old man. What would people say if I went on a date with a young and beautiful woman like you? What's that? I'm a proper 23-year-old adult. I'm not a student, so you can't reject me like that. I chuckled awkwardly at Maria's devilish smile. I had never met such an assertive woman before. However, I continued to gently decline her invitations for a date. Considering her position as the daughter of the client's president, and the societal perspective on our age difference, which is over 20 years, there were endless barriers between me and Maria, but the biggest reason was the guilt I felt towards my deceased wife. I remembered the words of my proposal to my wife, "I will make you happy." I knew my wife was no longer here, but I thought that dating Maria might make those words I said to my wife seem like a lie. However, the next day, when Maria invited me for a date as usual, and I lightly brushed it off, saying, "No, you should go out with younger guys instead of someone like me," she suddenly started crying. "What's wrong, Maria?" I panicked. "It's just, no matter how hard I try to approach you, you never seem interested." And with that, she burst into tears like a child. I never imagined she was so serious about me. Me, of all people. "Okay, I understand. Let's go out for a meal next time." Then, she asked with a hopeful expression, "Really?" With her eyes moist with tears, she looked at me intently. "Of course, I'm not sure where young people go these days, though," I said hesitantly, and Maria confidently responded, "Leave it to me." Seeing her face change from tears to a bright smile, I couldn't help but laugh at her quickly shifting expressions. And so, we ended up going on a date at a nearby cafe. Maria looked stunning in her casual clothes. She inherited her beauty from her mother, as she said. I thought that the wife of a major company's president would naturally be beautiful. My mother was quite proactive, you know. Maria spoke about her mother. She purposely went to my father's company, catching his eye and initiating conversations. A real panther, my mother is. A panther, huh? I silently thought that Maria definitely inherited that gene. As the date ended, Maria looked up at me with pleading eyes and asked, "Will you meet me again?" Ah, yes. Eventually, I found myself repeatedly going on dates with her, persuaded by her insistence. Me, an old man, is that really okay? Her aggressive demeanor left me confused. Yet, I could sense her seriousness, not just playing around. It was only a matter of time before my feelings started to waver as I faced her straightforwardness. One day, I sat in front of my wife's altar. "What should I do, Emily? I haven't felt this way in a long time. I'm really sorry." I apologized. I was spending more and more time thinking about Maria. Can I really allow myself to fall for Maria? Confused about my feelings and pondering my future, I remembered a conversation I had with my wife. "What would you do if I cheated on you?" she asked with a teasing smile. I was startled, but she quickly added, "It's just hypothetical." This was after a friend of hers divorced due to her husband's infidelity. They were a happy couple, but infidelity ended their relationship. It seemed she was shocked by that harsh reality. So she was curious and asked me. I replied, "I don't even want to think about you cheating." Then, Emily responded with a slightly happy expression, saying, "Is that so?" Then I asked, "What if I cheated on you?" Then, she said, "Of course, I would divorce you," and glared at me in a loud voice. I was taken aback, but then she softened her expression and said, "But if I were to die early, you should find someone else and be happy." I was struck by her words. Remembering such a conversation now seemed so unexpected. But then, looking at my wife's portrait, I wondered, would Emily forgive me? Finally, I made a decision to respond sincerely to Maria's feelings, who cared for me so much. Later, I called Maria and asked her out on a date. She seemed a bit surprised and said, "It's unusual for you to ask me out." I planned to propose a relationship to Maria on that date. However, her response was shocking. "I can no longer meet you, Ken." I was momentarily stunned and asked calmly, "Is something wrong?" But Maria remained silent. "Is there someone else you like? I guess. An old man like me. You're tired of me." As I said that, she yelled at me, "Stop calling yourself an old man." After a while, I could hear her sobbing over the phone. She tearfully appealed to me. "I really like you, Ken. I just can't help it, but I can't. I don't deserve to be with you." I didn't understand what she meant as she continued crying. As Maria was about to hang up, saying goodbye, I urgently said, "Wait, please," trying desperately to stop her. "There's something I have to tell you." As I said this, Maria whispered, "Okay," and then added, "I have something to tell you too." She then suggested, "Can we go on one last date?" Since she insisted, I agreed to follow her to a place she wanted to visit. Days later, Maria led me to a location far from any typical date spot. It was near that shopping street. My heart started to beat uncomfortably fast. Maria, without a smile today. She led the way in silence. Where was she taking me? "Just a little further," she said, without looking back. Maria kept walking without looking at me. "No, it can't be," I murmured to myself repeatedly. Despite my disbelief, Maria continued walking towards that place, to the very spot where my wife had her accident. Then, Maria turned to face me once again. "This is where your previous wife died, right?" Yes, it is. I had told Maria the details when she asked about my wife's death on our previous date. I remember her being shocked then. 15 years ago, after hearing about the accident, I suspected and checked. I've seen your wife before. What do you mean? Where? Maria slowly opened her tightly sealed lips. I was in the passenger seat of the car that hit your wife. I was stunned. The shocking revelation left me speechless. Maria continued apologizing through her tears. I'm sorry. The driver at the time of the accident was a 19-year-old university student. He didn't give off a distinctive character at first impression. Rather, he seemed quite serious. The car had a new driver's mark, and there was no sign of speeding or distracted driving. He had just gotten his license and was inexperienced. After entering a poorly visible road, my wife suddenly appeared in front of the car, and he tried to brake. But in his panic, he confused the accelerator and the brake, hitting my wife. I heard this testimony in court from the young driver. His words were sincere, and I could tell he was genuinely remorseful and trying to face his guilt. This made the accident even more tragic. The young driver was a university student and a basketball player. On weekends, he coached a basketball club at his old elementary school. That day, he was in the process of dropping off students at their homes. He seemed to be a kind-hearted person. Somehow, it felt wrong to blame just this student. There was no mirror at that corner, and no guardrail was installed. There were clear safety deficiencies. So, I told him to focus on safe driving in the future, and did not blame him further. After the accident, mirrors and guardrails were installed at the site, and I chose to believe that my wife's death was not in vain. This was all I vividly remembered. I had forgotten, but the young student Maria was in the car at the time. I didn't remember the name of the child in the passenger seat. According to Maria, the accident still haunts her in her dreams. The moment my wife was trapped between the car and the wall. I knew Maria had trauma from a car accident, but I never imagined it was from the perspective of the offender. The time she had a seizure on the bus was precisely when we passed the scene of the accident. I always wanted to bring flowers every year, but I couldn't. I'm so sorry. Maria continued to apologize tearfully. At the moment of the accident, I was talking to the coach. I innocently asked how my shots were that day. Then the accident happened. If I hadn't distracted the coach, maybe your wife wouldn't have died. Maria said this and then bowed deeply to me, saying, I won't come near you again. Her words pained me, and I instinctively said, Maria, it's not your fault, while stroking her head. That accident was beyond your control. You just happened to be in the next seat. You're not to blame. I don't want you to suffer anymore. Before I knew it, I was holding Maria in my arms. She cried in my embrace. The university student who was driving has already paid for his mistake. As long as he continues to live without causing another accident, that's enough for me. I believe my wife in heaven would think the same. So, I couldn't finish my sentence. I couldn't decide then whether it was right for me to fall for Maria. Maria was also unsure whether it was okay for her to like me. Even though we had mutual feelings, we were uncertain whether to cross that barrier as time passed. Yet, I continued to stay in touch with Maria. Our conversations about daily happenings and good food were enjoyable, albeit simple. Eventually, I asked her out on a date and expressed my feelings to her. She asked me, "Am I good enough for you?" After nodding, I embraced her. Despite the twists and turns, we decided to start a relationship. I don't know what the future holds, but for now, I just want to be with Maria. I believe my wife in heaven would support our relationship,